Here we go.
All right. So we are going to have a review of Star Trek Picard, issue 2 of Countdown. This is the comic book series. We did review the first issue a while back on a previous episode. And this particular issue has been out a couple weeks now, but we're just getting to it. We did find out when we were kind of talking back and forth and off the show that apparently issue 3 is not coming out until after Star Trek Picard airs, which I think both of us found a little bit shocking. It is what it is. I thought the whole point was to get this story out before the show, because what this comic is dealing with is basically when Picard was still in Starfleet, and he was basically trying to help the Romulans to evacuate from the Romulan Empire, because it wasn't just Romulus affected. Apparently, the entire Empire was affected. So they also had to evacuate colonies. It wasn't apparently just Romulus. So to kind of review issue 1, basically what happened was that Picard himself was going to a particular planet that had, I think, it was supposed to be a relatively small colony of about 10,000 Romulans. He was going there to basically survey it, kind of get those people ready. And then the twist at the end was there's a native population on this planet of like 4 million, they said, something like that. Or
yeah, it's a very high number.
Millions of people.
Yeah, there's no way they could evacuate the sheer number of people that were. It's literally like trying to evacuate like a whole nother one of the Romulan throne worlds or whatever. And Picard was shocked because to the Romulans, these people weren't entities or beings that needed to be saved. They're just like cattle or animals or whatever, because they're very much a slave, an enslaved people that's doing their bidding. And, of course, to them, they're not worthy of saving. So they didn't even tell anyone that all these people were there. So it goes from a simple survey, we'll figure out how we'll fit this in. We'll tack this on to the rescue mission we're already doing. And then it turns into what? So an interesting twist for the comic, that's for sure.
Right. So in the previous comic, in issue 1, basically at the end of the story, Picard is thrown in jail. He's not going to go along with what the Romulan authorities want to do, which is basically just abandon the native population and let them have their own fate. Picard says that's not right. It's not what he signed up for. Obviously, that gets him thrown in jail. So that's where we were left off. So in the second issue, we basically begin there. I think they do a little bit of I got the issue right in front of me just so I can reference it. So we basically start there at the same place. We're kind of introduced to some new characters, which I think they might have been in the previous one at the Vineyard. So we kind of have a little bit of indication of where these characters are going. But Picard has basically been kind of put under house arrest. I'm looking at the issue right now. I mean, he's confined, but he's still sitting there with the governor, and they're having wine and things like that, and they're discussing the entire situation. And in the middle of all this, there's a breakout. The governor's headquarters is attacked. And who's attacking? It's the natives. The native population has apparently risen up and is attacking the governor and attacking the Romulans. Which I thought was an interesting twist. I was cool with that. It seems to me that they the idea that these are just stupid brutes or whatever, they have no idea what's going on. That would be kind of silly, right?
Right.
They are a sentient species and all that. So they do go ahead and they do attack the governor's headquarters, and they break Picard out along with the new character. I don't know her name. But we do have the new character that's going to be in the series. She is in this book. She is the lieutenant commander. Not sure how I feel about her, especially with the JL thing. I've said I'm not a fan of the JL thing at all. It doesn't fit Picard to me. That's kind of disrespectful to me. But she's there, and she gets out as well. So now they're out, and we have to figure out what's going on, right? With this uprising.
Right.
And it turns out that apparently, and obviously this is full of spoilers. We're just going over the whole story so we can kind of evaluate it. So it turns out that the primitives, if you will, that have been doing this uprising, they're kind of being supported by the local Tal Shiar agents, which is kind of weird, right?
Yeah, I thought that was kind of strange.
I think that's very strange. So apparently the local Gestapo, okay, this is the equivalent. These are the secret police. The local Gestapo has become sympathetic to the primitives. You know, I'm just using that term. The native population. That's what I should say. The native population. They become sympathetic to them, which is, you know, they kind of give you a little bit of what's going on. Apparently, these Tal Shiar agents aren't like your traditional Gestapo. They're more like spies that are basically integrated into the population to keep an eye on things. And I could see where, I guess, if you were in that position, kind of the same way that happens with undercover agents. You know, if you've seen Donnie Brasco or anything like that, you know, undercover agents can become very sympathetic to the people that they're watching, the people that they're accumulating evidence on, right?
Right.
So I guess that's kind of what's happened here, is the Tal Shiar agents have become sympathetic to the native population and are essentially helping them because they don't agree with the policy of the governor and presumably probably the policy of the Romulan government in general, right?
Right.
This is one part of lore that I've talked about that I like, because we've always heard the Romulan Empire, we've always said the Klingon Empire. I mentioned this before. I've always kind of like assumed in my own headcanon, of course, the Klingons being an empire must have other races that they've conquered and taken over, because they talk about conquest all the time. If you're an empire, that's what you do. Colonization isn't just sending your own people to other planets the way the Federation does. It is the subjugation of other people, right? Native people, that kind of thing, just like in our own history. That's what empires do. The British Empire, you know what I mean? That's what they do. That's what empires do. So I kind of like the fact that with the Romulans, we kind of start to see a little bit of that, where we're seeing, yes, that's exactly what they do. They go to planets with inferior technology, and they take it over, right? And they exploit the local population. I bet the Klingons did the same thing. If they may even still do it. But we just don't see it. And so that is one thing that I like seeing in this. So we have that kind of scenario going on. And here's the thing. This is when we were talking back and forth about why I really wanted to talk about this issue. Aside from the fact that we're doing a lead up to Picard. Obviously, we're going to be focusing on leading up to Picard up until the debut of Star Trek Picard. After we get all this information, so we've kind of got this new situation where now the primitives know what's going on. I keep saying the primitives. I'm using the Romulan term. I've been brainwashed by Romulan propaganda. Right. So, the natives now are actively resisting the Romulans. They obviously know what's going on. They want to get off the planet, and they're being helped by the local Tal Shiar agents. So that's one that I think that twist is enough, don't you think? To me,
right. Yeah,
that's enough to deal with.
That's plenty and 3 issues.
Yes, we only got 1 issue left. Then all of a sudden they add this other thing. What's that?
I said it's actually probably too much for 3 issues.
Right, it's too much for 3 issues. But then they add this other twist, and this is what really got me, and this is what I really want to talk to you about. Then the Romulans turn on the Federation because, Picard's ship is still up there in orbit, and they basically take over the ship. And I'm like, wait, what? Okay. Even are the Romulans that stupid? They're going to take over the flagship of the rescue operation. And it seems to me they kind of give like this very weak explanation. Like they try to establish that the Romulans are kind of like, oh, they're very suspicious of the Federation. I'm like, no, they're not. They're not that suspicious. They know the Federation wants peace. They know how the Federation works. You know what I mean?
Right.
So it's like, come on. So what they think that the Federation is going to nefariously throw them, program all the ships to fly into a star or something like that. They know the Federation wouldn't do that. So that was the thing that I really kind of got me at the end. Not only did they open up this big can of worms with the native population and these Tal Shiar agents, which I'm just kind of like, that's crazy to begin with. But then the governor goes ahead and takes over Picard's ship. And I'm like, how are you going to resolve this in one issue? One more, 22-page issue. Because that's like too much. That's what I really wanted to hear your reaction on and what you think about that.
Well, here's the thing. On one hand, I liked a lot of. There was some interesting artistic choices in how the artist from the last issue was handling some of the elements. Even though I think I liked the first issue a little bit better, I feel like this creative team was under quite a crunch to put this together. But here's my overall takeaway with this book. And I don't mean to disparage the creative team because I hated when people used to tear the books apart that I was working on. This story, they were trying to do so much. And I'm like going, how are you going to resolve this before the show? And then I just kind of forgot about it. It didn't really stick with me. I think it's an example of trying to do too much. So that's my takeaway from this issue.
Yeah, I think they are trying to do too much. I'm especially well. We have a good comment, by the way, from Ballerina KC. She is my friend who that I wanted to do that teaser review for.
Okay.
Yeah, she's asking if Sella's going to be involved. Now Sella, of course, if anybody has done Star Trek Online, Sella is very prominent in the Romulan Empire. She has actually taken over the Romulan Empire in the aftermath of Romulus's destruction. That's in the online game. And there is a plot in the online game where she's involved with this power struggle with the Tal Shiar. There's this big power struggle between her and the Tal Shiar. And then also there's a breakaway. There's a Romulan Republic now, which is like a breakaway from the Romulan Empire. So there's essentially almost like three factions within the Romulans. And a lot of people have speculated that Star Trek Picard is actually going to take a lot from Star Trek Online, because we know the Borg situation with the Borg being experimented on by the Romulans. We know that's going to be happening in Star Trek Picard, and that is in the Star Trek Online game. So as far as Sella and Tasha Yar being back, I have speculated on the show that perhaps we will have one more legacy character come back, and to me, Denise Crosby, Sella would make a lot of sense.
Right. It does make a lot of sense, and I hope they do that. Like I said, I am hoping for more connection, to events that happened in Next Gen, events that happened in Voyager, in the films. That's what I want. I want to see a continuation of the stories that we're familiar with. I would like to see, an acknowledgement even of the Countdown series that led into the Kelvin era, the first of the J.J. Abrams movies. Because in that Countdown series, which I think it was called Countdown, in that series, Data was...
I do find that confusing that both series are called Countdown. Both comic series are called Countdown. And what we're referring to is previously with the Kelvin timeline, they did a prequel comic book also called Countdown that basically focused on the same thing, the destruction of Romulus. So it seems to me that obviously this Countdown is kind of meant to, fix that, right, because of things that they're not going to go with.
Right. And so I'm very much hoping that that they will connect the dots between, the history and the characters and the things that we know. That's one of the things that Cobra Kai does incredibly well, is by bringing those characters back that we know and moving their story forward and showing us where they are today, or in the context of Cobra Kai, where they are today. Whereas I'm hoping in the Picard show, I'm hoping they do that as well. And I was kind of surprised in the Countdown comic that even the Countdown comic avoided using a lot of the Next Gen characters that we know. because it wouldn't have costed them anything extra to use them in this. They could have just littered this thing with characters that we know. I mean, this whole lead up could have just been dripping with characters and planets and things that we're very, very familiar with, and just get everyone just really salivating, exciting for Picard. And then you get into Picard and, well, it's all new, So I was kind of surprised because I think we talked about the last issue. I'm kind of surprised that they're not on Riker's ship. It just, I don't know. That's my thing with a lot of this stuff is that I don't know if it has, you read a lot of, I don't know. I read a lot of stuff. I see a lot of stuff. They said it has to do with royalties and ownership and contracts and all this other stuff. And so they can't use certain things. So maybe there is something involved there, but I do hope that it would make sense to me that Seal would be involved. And I think it'd be really fun and interesting to see that. And it would be a fun surprise because we haven't seen anything that's really led us down that path to question right now who's running the Romulan Empire.
Right.
I haven't given it a lot of thought.
Like I said, in Star Trek Online, it is Sela. It is Denise Crosby's character. She's the one that's basically in charge of the remnants of the Romulan Empire.
Well, I very much like that idea, and I hope that's what they do.
So I guess we'll see. Now, as far as the comic book goes, like I said, that was the biggest thing to me. Was I do feel like I think our takeaway is I feel like they're trying to do too much and they're going in sort of weird directions. So I am going to be very curious how they resolve it. I am curious just to see what happens because I do think they're taking on quite a bit with this particular comic. And, I said it before in our review of issue 1. I feel like the creative team was probably sitting in a room with whoever was sort of in charge from representing CBS All Access. And they would say, well, like, what if we do this? And they were like, nope, can't do that. What about this? Nope, you can't do that. Said, this is what we're going to do, Right. That's kind of how I feel about it. And I just, like I said, the twist, because I read the issue before you did. And so I've been waiting like a couple of weeks to talk to you about it because I'm just like, yeah, that twist at the end, that to me, I'm just like, how are you going to get out of this in one issue? It's like this, you've now opened it up where this could be like it's whole, like a whole series in and of itself. All this crazy stuff happening with the Romulans during this evacuation. And to me, my understanding was that this series was meant to basically tell us why Picard left Starfleet.
Right.
Why he left Starfleet. And so I don't know if that's where we're going to be in issue 3.
I don't think it's going to tell us the total reason why. And the way you get out of this, to be completely honest, is someone destroys the ship. That's the way how you resolve issue 3 in a way in which nobody wins.
Yeah.
Is that they get back on board the ship, they let as many people into the escape pods as they possibly can, and they destroy the ship. And then whatever happens with this planet is now cast into doubt. Picard just lost a Federation starship. You know what I mean? It puts the whole rescue mission, it puts everything in a weird situation. If he goes to this planet to pick up 10,000 people, everything went sideways. The Romulans are saying one thing, Picard's saying something else, and the ship's gone. And a whole bunch of Federation officers are dead. Who are they going to blame? Who are they going to believe? I think that's how you end the 3rd issue, is you end up blowing up the ship. Because then nobody gets off the planet, really. Nothing ends well for anybody. A bunch of people die. It's a giant catastrophic disaster. And then, like I said, the Federation finds himself in a position of who do they believe? You hope they're going to believe Picard, but if it's only him and one other person, and that's it, and all these people died and the ship's gone, and the Romulans are going, oh no, this is what happened. I could see that could drive a wedge between Picard and the Federation. What do you mean you don't believe me? Politically, they may have to choose to believe what the Romulans say. So I think that's how you end. I really think because the stakes are so high, I really think that's the only way you end this issue. You destroy the ship.
It'll be interesting. I guess we'll find out. but it won't be for a little while. Like I said, it's apparently the next issue isn't coming out until after Star Trek Picard premieres.